If you're new to Ask Reddit cheating drama, make sure to subscribe and like the video. It only takes a few seconds, but it really motivates us to create more crazy cheating stories. Now, let's get into the story. I stared at the white stick in my trembling hand, the tiny pink lines blurring through a film of tears. 2 lines. Not one, not faint, not questionable, positive. My knees buckled, and I sank to the cold bathroom floor, back pressed against the locked door, as if it could somehow keep the truth from leaking out into the rest of the world, into my marriage, into him, Daniel. I whispered his name like a prayer, or maybe a warning, but it wasn't his child. I knew that the way you know when a storm is about to hit, even before the sky darkens, with a certainty that doesn't need confirmation. My stomach churned. Not from the pregnancy, not yet. From guilt, from fear, from the realization that this secret growing inside me, was the end of everything I had spent years trying to hold together. And worst of all, I couldn't even tell you why I did it. Not really. It wasn't for love. It wasn't even for revenge. It was for something far more pathetic. I just wanted to feel seen. People always say marriage is hard work, but no one tells you what to do when only one of you is still working on it. Daniel and I weren't always like this. There was a time he used to write me little notes and leave them in my sketchbooks. Silly things like, "You're the most beautiful mess I've ever seen." There was a time we used to stay up talking about everything and nothing until the sun came up and the coffee pot was empty. We laughed so much back then. God, we laughed. But life, it has a way of stealing things from you without making a sound. Somewhere between promotions, meetings, deadlines, and dinners eaten in silence, I lost him. Or maybe he lost me. Or maybe we just let go and didn't realize until the distance between us had a name. Daniel became busy. Always busy. His eyes were always on his phone, even when he asked me how my day was. He never looked up. I started talking less. Then not at all. Sometimes I'd watch him sleeping next to me and wonder if this was what love turned into. Quiet, cold, and perfectly polite. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. We just faded. And in that silence, I began to disappear, piece by piece. I dressed differently. I smiled less. I buried myself in work, in books, in long walks I didn't need to take. I told myself I was fine, until one day someone saw through that lie. His name was Logan Price, Daniel's best friend. The first time I noticed Logan was on a Thursday. He'd always been around. Holidays, barbecues, the occasional poker night at our place. But that day, something was different. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, or maybe it was just that I finally let myself look back. Daniel had forgotten it was our anniversary, again. He left early for a meeting, kissed the top of my head absent-mindedly, and promised he'd be home by 8. He didn't even notice the dress I'd put on, the dinner I'd cooked, or the wine chilling in the fridge. Logan showed up around 7, uninvited, said he was in the neighborhood and had something to drop off for Daniel. When he saw the candles on the table, the flowers, already wilting in their vase, he paused. Then something in his eyes shifted. "Did I interrupt something?" he asked gently. I laughed. It sounded more like a cough. "Only my pride." He stayed. He poured the wine. He sat across from me and listened. Not just with polite nods, but really listened. The kind of listening that feels like being touched. I don't remember what we talked about. Just that I laughed for the first time in weeks. Just that he looked at me like I wasn't invisible. That night, nothing happened. No lines were crossed. But I went to bed thinking about him. And the next morning, I checked my phone, hoping for a message. There wasn't one. But somehow, the waiting was worse than the silence I'd grown used to. It started with small things. A message the next morning. "You looked beautiful last night. Sorry if I overstepped." I stared at it for hours before replying. "You didn't." Then came the excuses. I started passing by Logan's office downtown by coincidence. He started stopping by ours to see Daniel, though Daniel was never there. We became fluent in half-truths. The messages grew longer, deeper, more intimate. At first it was jokes, memories of college parties, stupid things Daniel used to do. But then he started asking about me, how I was sleeping, what I was dreaming, what I needed, really needed. And I told him. I told him things I hadn't said aloud in years, that I felt invisible, unwanted, like a ghost in my own home. He didn't try to fix me, he just saw me. That's all it took. Soon I was checking my phone before I brushed my teeth, smiling when I heard the ping of his name. He became the thought I reached for when Daniel kissed me absent-mindedly, or forgot I hated cilantro, or scrolled through emails at the dinner table. I told myself it was innocent. It was just talking. But late at night, when I rolled over in bed with my phone tucked beneath my pillow and Daniel sleeping beside me, I knew. I knew I was lying, not just to him, but to myself. There was a night, weeks later, when Logan said something I couldn't unhear. "If you were mine, I'd never forget your anniversary." I didn't respond, but I read that message again, and again, and again, and somehow, each time I felt a little less married. It happened on a night that should have been ordinary. Daniel had canceled dinner. Again. A client emergency, or so he said. He didn't even bother to sound sorry anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, candles burning low, a plate growing cold in front of me. Logan called. His voice was calm, low, the way it always was when he could hear the crack in mine before I even spoke. "Come out," he said. "You need to get out of that house before it swallows you." I didn't ask where. I didn't ask why. He picked me up 20 minutes later. It was raining, the kind of soft, endless drizzle that makes the world feel suspended. We didn't talk much in the car. Just music humming quietly between us, some old jazz song I didn't recognize, but suddenly loved. He drove to his apartment, said it would only be for a bit. Just to talk, just some wine. I believed him, or maybe I wanted to. The apartment was warm, dimly lit, smelling faintly of cedar and something sweeter, like cinnamon or regret. We sat on the couch, too close, too far. I remember the silence more than anything, how it stretched between us like a thread pulled tight. "I hate how he treats you," Logan said suddenly. His voice broke something in me. I didn't reply. I couldn't, because I didn't want to talk anymore, because I didn't want comfort. I wanted to forget. And then he kissed me. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't unsure. It was everything I hadn't felt in years. Hunger, heat, need. I kissed him back. I told myself I wouldn't go any further. But then his hands were in my hair, and mine were gripping the back of his neck, and something inside me shattered. The last piece of who I thought I was. We didn't make love. We escaped. And when it was over, I lay there in his bed, listening to the rain tap softly against the window. And I didn't cry. Not yet. Because in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lonely. But God, how fast that feeling fades. It started with a wave of nausea. I thought it was guilt. I hoped it was stress. But somewhere, deep in my gut, even before the test, I knew. There's a kind of knowing that lives in the bones of a woman. Primal, certain, unshakable. I stood in the drugstore staring at the wall of pregnancy tests, hands shaking, heart pounding so hard I thought the floor might give beneath me. I bought 3. I took them all. 2 pink lines, every time. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, hands gripping porcelain, trying to breathe. Trying to lie to myself. It could be Daniel's, but it wasn't. We hadn't been intimate in months, maybe longer. I'd stopped counting when it started to hurt less. And I remembered that night with Logan with terrifying clarity. No protection, no pause, no thought. My first instinct was to call him. Logan didn't answer right away. When he finally called back, he didn't sound surprised. He didn't say, "Are you sure?" He didn't say, "We'll figure it out." He said nothing for several seconds. Then finally, "Emily, this changes everything." But it didn't. Not really. He became distant after that. Not cruel, just cautious. Careful. Like I was a glass he couldn't afford to drop. His texts came less often, The late-night calls stopped. He no longer reached for me. Not emotionally, not physically, not at all. I was alone again. Except now, I was carrying something I couldn't undo. I didn't tell Daniel. I told myself I needed time, that I'd find the right moment. But really, I was hoping the truth would just dissolve on its own, that if I waited long enough, the lie would somehow become the truth. But lies have a way of rotting from the inside out, and soon, everything began to unravel. It wasn't a dramatic explosion, no slamming doors, no screaming, no fists through drywall, just one question. We were in the kitchen. Daniel was pouring coffee. I was slicing an apple, pretending I could eat through the nausea and dread. He looked up at me, quiet and unreadable. "Are you cheating on me?" I dropped the knife. I didn't ask why he was asking. I didn't ask who he thought it was with. Because when someone asks you a question like that, they already know. There's no innocence left to defend. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Not a denial, not an excuse, just silence. And silence in that moment was a confession. He set the mug down, carefully, as if sudden movement might break what was already broken. He looked at me like I was a stranger wearing his wife's face. "It's Logan, isn't it?" His voice didn't crack. Mine did. I don't remember what I said. Maybe it was, "I'm sorry." Maybe it was, "It didn't mean anything." Maybe it was nothing at all. But I remember his face. I remember the exact moment his heart left his body. And I remember the last thing he said before walking out the door. "You didn't just betray me. You burned everything." He didn't slam it. He didn't look back. He just left. And Logan? He never came. I texted him. I called. I begged for something, even just the decency of closure. But he vanished into his silence like a coward wrapped in guilt. I was alone. Utterly, painfully, deservedly alone. The house felt colder after that. Every room a crime scene, every photograph a lie. The silence became deafening. Not because Daniel was gone, but because now I knew why. Because I had put the match to the life I swore to protect, and now all I could do was watch it burn. The weeks after Daniel left were quiet in the loudest way, not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, the kind that echoes, the kind that reminds you every second that someone is gone and not coming back. People stopped calling. Mutual friends didn't know what to say, so they said nothing. His sister, who used to text me good morning, blocked my number. Even my mother didn't ask questions, just sighed and said, "Emily, how could you?" I moved through the days like a ghost. I went to work. I smiled when I had to. I decorated other people's homes, while mine slowly emptied of everything that ever made it feel like ours. I slept in the guest room. I couldn't bear the bed we used to share. Sometimes I thought about Logan. Sometimes I hated him. Sometimes I hated myself more, not for sleeping with him, but for expecting him to stay. I never told him about the baby. Maybe I should have. Maybe he had the right to know, but I couldn't stomach the thought of reaching out again, only to be met with that same silence. So I raised my child alone, a little boy, beautiful, with Daniel's eyes. But not Daniel's son. He never asked to be born into this mess. He never asked to carry the weight of my sins. And sometimes, when he sleeps, soft and warm against my chest, I wonder what I'll say when he's old enough to ask where his father is. What do you tell a child when the truth would break something innocent inside them? I live a small life now. No more grand gestures, no more wine-stained secrets, just quiet mornings, grocery lists, and lullabies sung too softly to hurt. But late at night, when the world is still, I go back to the bathroom floor, to the moment I first saw those 2 pink lines, to the choice that unraveled my life. And I ask myself the question I'll never fully answer. Was being seen worth being ruined? It's been 3 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Other days, it feels like someone else's life. A story I read, not a story I lived. I no longer cry about it, not because it hurts less, but because the ache has settled into something permanent, something almost gentle, like scar tissue. You stop picking at it, but it's always there, beneath the surface. The house is smaller now, just 2 bedrooms, one for me, one for Noah. Yes, that's his name. I picked it on a rainy afternoon, the kind of rain that reminded me of that night. Noah. It means rest, or comfort, depending on the translation. Maybe I was hoping he'd be both. He's starting to ask questions. Where's Daddy? I pause every time. I open my mouth, close it. I smile. I lie. He's not here right now. One day I'll have to tell him the truth. Not all of it, just enough. Just the parts that won't make him hate me. Or maybe I'll let him grow up believing something kinder. That his father left, but not because of him. Because of me. Because I couldn't hold on to the woman I promised I would be. Sometimes, after he's asleep, I sit in the dark living room with a cup of tea and no sound but the hum of the refrigerator and the weight of my thoughts. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd said no, if I'd deleted the message, if I'd walked out of that apartment before it ever happened. But I didn't. And now I live in the after. I'm writing this now, not to be forgiven. I know better than to ask for that. But because sometimes you have to name the thing that ruined you just to survive it. So here it is. My story. My shame. My silence. And if anyone ever finds this, if anyone ever wonders what happened to Emily Carter, you'll know. I wasn't evil. I wasn't innocent. I was just lonely. And loneliness, when it's deep enough, can feel a lot like love.